Hello, a new week, brothers and sisters. Let us start with MMT. The euro, the greatest prediction of the last 20 years. Pragcap, who puts a question mark after that, which is honourable. Being right matters. This isn't emphasised quite enough in the finance world and in economics in general. Too often, bad theory has led to bad predictions, which has helped contribute to bad policy, while MMT remains a heterodox economic school that has been largely shunned by mainstream economics and economists. The modern proponents have an awfully good track record in predicting highly complex economic events. Now, I've carved these up out of it to make it easier, but we have. In 1997, Wynne Godley described the inherent flaw in the euro. I touched on that last week. In his must-read book, Understanding Modern Money, Randall Wray described in 1998 the same dynamic that led to the crisis in the EMU. In 2002, Stephanie Kelton, then Stephanie Bell, was even more specific in describing the funding crisis that would inevitably ensue in the region. And 2001, Warren Mosler described the liquidity crisis that the euro would lead to. And if you follow the link, you can read the more details of how jolly right they were. He finishes with, in a recent article, Paul Krugman referred to some of his predictions as big stuff. What the MMT school has accomplished through its understanding and prescience of the European Union is not merely big stuff, it is nothing short of remarkable. This was not merely saying that the euro was flawed for this reason or that, and that the construct of a united Europe was misguided, a prediction made by many at the time of the euro's inception due to mainly to political biases. The MMT economists approached the formation of the euro from a purely operational aspect and predicted with near perfection exactly why it was flawed and exactly why it would not work as is currently constructed. Last paragraph. Some economists say MMT focuses too much on reality. That was comical. That was a couple of months ago. Some bigwig economist said that MMT just focuses too much on reality. I think it was a Freudian slip of the tongue, but it was funny at the time. By focusing on the actual operational aspects of the banking system and the monetary system. But as we have seen time and time again, having a poor understanding of the monetary system is not only detrimental to your portfolio, but detrimental to the millions of citizens who are now being subjected to the ignorance of the economists who influence these monetary constructs. And it's looking like, strangely, MMT, Little Prism, is acting out of the norm. Most little prisms out there in the big world just concentrate into crap. But MMT is looking like it might be more like a scientific prism that concentrates into a solid bit of this is how life is. This morning's Financial Times, an unbridged divide takes its toll, and unbridged is the fact that Congress said that we're not going to do any infrastructure spending, and starts with a joke. A driver stuck in a jam in Washington. A man knocks on his window. Terrorists have kidnapped Congress and they're asking for $100 million, otherwise they'll burn them with gasoline, the man says. We're going from car to car to get donations. What are people on average giving? Asks the driver. Oh, about a gallon, comes the reply. That lot in Washington better get their shit together. Times are bad, and the country needs leadership. I forget where this is from. Anyway, follow the link, you'll find it. In a March 15 declaration calling for defunding of most social programs, the new Boston Tea Party was blunt. The locusts are eating, or should we say devouring, the output of the hard-working taxpayer. The conservative agenda, in a climate of scarcity, racializes policymaking, calling for deep cuts in programs for the poor. The beneficiaries of these programs are disproportionately black and Hispanic. Less obviously, but just as racially charged, is the assault on public employees. We can no longer live in a society where the public employees are the haves and the taxpayers who foot the bills are the have-nots, declared Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin. For black Americans, government employment is a crucial means of upward mobility. The federal workforce is 18.6% African American, compared with 10.9% in the private sector. The percentage of African Americans are highest in just those agencies that are most actively targeted for cuts by Republicans. College graduates' debt burden grew yet again in 2010. Students who graduated from college in 2010 with student loans owed on average $25,250, up 5% from the previous year, according to a report scheduled for release on Thursday. The average debt, once again the highest on record, came as the class of 2010 faced an unemployment rate for new college graduates of 9.1%, the highest in recent years, according to the report by the Project on Student Debt, which pointed out that unemployment rates for those without college degrees were still higher. So that 9.1 is actually for people with college degrees and $25,250 of debt. Yahoo Finance. Most of the unemployed no longer receive benefits. Washington. The jobs crisis have left so many people out of work for so long that most of the Americans unemployed are no longer receiving unemployment benefits. Early last year, 75% were receiving checks. The figure is now 48%, a shift that points to a growing crisis of long-term unemployment. Nearly one-third of America's 14 million unemployed have had no job for a year or more. So that's about 5 million. That's an awful lot. That's horrid. Greenhouse gases. Worldwide emissions of heat-trapping carbon dioxide soared 6% in 2010, producing the highest annual net increase of carbon pollution ever. It suggests the economy was improving last year. Hey? Oh, I see. The economy was improving, so we're burning more fossil fuels and making more CO2. I get it. Okay. The map down at the bottom, the darker you are, the more carbon emissions you're pumping out. China on its own in very blue. United States second in next lot of blue. India looks like it's third, and in fourth are Russia, Germany, Canada. So I'm seeing a pattern. China's a mass producer. US is, I don't know where they make their carbon, just driving around probably. Canada's an oil producer. Germany is a manufacturer. Saudi Arabia is an oil producer. India's a manufacturer, and they're inefficient with their burning of fossil fuels. Russia's an oil producer that's inefficient in its burning of fuels. Japan's a producer, and South Korea's a producer. I get the idea. Okay, this is some of the details on the peak stuff, the Guardian stuff in the UK. And it's quite interesting in its own way. Inputs, total material, consumption, water. Peak year is the second column, the middle column there. 2001 was peak for total material requirement. Water, 2003. And over on the right, that side, declined between peak and 2007. You know, it's old data. But how much it's declined, and they've declined quite a lot after the peak in the middle year, which is, you know, actually use of minerals about in the middle. Cement 1984 was the peak, and the UK is 26% down after that. There's another early one, isn't there? Some fertilizers 1987, 40% down since, but most of the peak stuff is 2001, 2002, 2003. This is from the PDF that sort of information came from. I've just picked out one chart, which is vaguely interesting, that total calorific intake per person is down. This chart's only going back to 2001, but you can see the trend is having an intake of less calories. And this is where the problem comes in. GNP is pointed out in most of these things, saying, look, we're over the hill, over the peak of using all these things, but still GNP, gross national product, is going up. For that you can swap in GDP, effectively the same thing for most countries. Okay, moving on, and there's another Guardian article which is just all based around these figures and different ways of looking at it. Household waste per person peaking there in 2002 and going down. Another Guardian article, all talking about the same thing, where we get this paragraph where it tries to balance it up a bit. There are other reasons to be sceptical of the rosy peak stuff message. For instance, much of UK's growth through the boom years was built on financial sector expansion that was either illusory in terms of real wealth, they obviously know what real wealth is, or built on extracting rents from global commodity markets. In other words, not only was the growth unsustainable in ecological terms, it was directly responsible for the crisis itself and has left us poorly equipped even for economic sustainability. One way or another, extracting and using more resources abroad is still the basis for our home lifestyles. The underlying model for the globalized economy remains unchanged. Get China to make it the world dirty and we'll just buy the toys in, sort of thing. Finish with a little flourish on the euro cock-up predicted by the MMT people at the start of this article and back in 10 years ago. Bundesbank central bank reserves will not help fund the EFSF. They're just hunting round underneath the settee, underneath the cushions, struggling to find some trillion or so euro to back up everything. Germany's Bundesbank on Saturday rejected media reports that its reserves would be used to fund the Eurozone's rescue facility after German newspapers said group of 20 leaders had discussed the idea of tapping central banks. The Frankfurter Allgemeine Sonntagszeitung, reported that Bundesbank reserves, including foreign currency and gold, would be used to increase Germany's contribution to the crisis fund, the European Financial Stability Facility, by more than 15 billion euros. But we think not. I don't think they'll really be putting their hand on the Bundesbank gold to back up the EFSF, will they? Nein. This is the boss of China's Wealth Fund on the situation. I won't do the accent because I'm struggling to get the difference between Japanese and Chinese. All it comes out as like that. It's very cartoon. Oh, go on then. If you look at the troubles which happened in European countries, this is purely because of the accumulated trouble of the worn-out welfare society. I think the labour laws are outdated. The labour laws induce sloth, indolence, rather than hard working. The incentive system is totally out of whack. Why should, for instance, within the Eurozone, why should some people have to work to 65, even longer, whereas in some other country they are happily retiring at 55, languishing on the beach? This is unfair. The welfare system is good for any society to reduce the gap, to help those who happen to have disadvantage, to enjoy good life. But welfare society should not induce people not to work hard. In other words, look, we're working our little yellow arses off. We're not going to do that and just bung you lots of money so people can retire and go to the beach at 55. Up yours. And Dilma Rousseff down in Cannes, the new boss of Brazil, gives it, well, Europe's attempt to widen the, this is from a very good must-read link to Ambrose Evans Pritchard, who gets his big bat out again, and this is just one paragraph from it. Europe's attempt to widen the creditor net by drawing in the world's reserve states evoked near universal scorn in Cannes, and a damning put down by Brazil's Dilma Rousseff. I have not the slightest no, she's not Japanese. Portuguese. Oh, I don't know. I have not the slightest intention of contributing directly to the EFSF. If they are not willing to do it, why should I? Exactly, Dilma. So, another week comes and goes, and the European crisis isn't definitively put to bed, finished, tidied up. So they'll be talking about it all week again, and talking all about Greece and how important what happens in Greece is when it really isn't at all. The problems are a lot deeper than that, as spotted by the MMT people decades ago. Have a good week.